Hello and welcome to this Disney knitting tutorial. Today we will be making our 5th square in this series, the Cheshire Cat stripe square, and we'll have some new techniques to show you today. We're going to be doing stripes for the first time, so we'll be carrying yarn up the side of our work as we do stripes. We'll also be working a new textured pattern, which is moss stitch, which is a broken rib stitch or alternating rib stitch, and it gives us a lovely texture, but is very simple to do. So I really hope you'll enjoy this tutorial with me today. Thank you for watching. What are we going to need to make our Cheshire Cat striped square? We have 2 yarns we're going to be using today. Yarn A is this lovely magenta, this dark pink. And yarn B is crocus, which is a lighter dusky pink. We are going to need our 4mm knitting needles, a pair of scissors for trimming our ends, and then a darning needle just to sew those ends in right at the end. We are going to start with our magenta yarn and we are going to cast on 30 stitches. So we need a long tail of yarn and we need to make a slip knot. Pop that on the needle and cast on 30 stitches. We have 30 stitches there. Our first stripe of this square is going to be knit in moss stitch, which is a broken rib stitch, but we are going to be starting with row 1 and that's a knit row. So row 1, we're just going to knit a row. That's row 1 done there. We're going to start our moss stitch pattern on row 2, and I'll explain why we do that knit row first when it comes to our second stripe. But this is the start of our textured pattern on row 2. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be knitting the first stitch, then we're going to bring our yarn round and purl the next stitch. Bring your yarn to the back, knit the next stitch. Bring the yarn to the front and purl the next stitch. And we're going to continue doing this until the end of the row. So knit a stitch and purl a stitch. Just bring the yarn from the back to the front each time. If you forget to bring the yarn round and you then went into purl, what would happen is you would get like a double stitch with the yarn over, and that would confuse us when we were knitting and it'd lead to having holes in it. So that's why you always must bring your yarn round. I'm just going to carry on doing that to the end of the row. Knit 1, and we started on a knit stitch, so we're finishing on a purl. We've got an even number of stitches, so that is row 1, knit a stitch, purl a stitch. Row 2 starts with a purl stitch, and then we knit a stitch. So it's the alternate of what we did the first time. So purl a stitch, knit a stitch, purl a stitch, knit a stitch. Purl a stitch, knit a stitch. And we started on a purl, so we're going to finish on a knit, and that is row 2, which is purl 1, knit 1. So can you see that texture starting to form there with our purl bumps and our knit stitches alternating on the front? Gives us this lovely texture. Row 4 and 5, we're just going to repeat row 1 and 2 again. So knit a stitch, purl a stitch, knit a stitch, purl a stitch. Just keep doing that right to the end. And we started on a knit, so we're going to end on a purl. Row 4, we're going to repeat row 2, so we're starting on a purl stitch. And we are going to purl 1, knit 1 to the end. Purl 1, knit 1 to the end. If you lose track of what stitch you've just done when you're knitting and purling like this, it can be very easy to forget what you've literally just done the second before. It happens to all of us. It's very important to be able to read your knitting. So I've just zoomed in a little bit here so you can see that I've just done a purl stitch. So the purl bump is here. And that's my purl bump from the row below. So the stitch here is a knit stitch. So this is the stitch that's on the needle. Then underneath it is a little V. And then next to it is another purl stitch because the purl bump is right up close to the needle. Can you see that as we're going along there? So there's a V for the knit stitches and the purl bump right up close to the needle for the purl stitches. So I'm on a knit stitch next. So we started on a purl, so we're going to end on a knit. So that is row 4 and 5 done, and you can see that texture pattern is really starting to show there. We've just got one more row of this stripe to do, and we're going to be repeating row 2 once more. Row 6, knit 1, purl 1 to the end. Knit 1 and finish on a purl. So that is row 1 to 6, which is our first stripe in the magenta colour, and now we're going to change colour to our crocus yarn and work our second stripe. So we're going to be joining in our second colour, this lovely crocus, and to do this, what I like to do, just zoom in a little bit, is tie a loop around your working yarn. Tighten. And slide that up so that it's ready to start working with. We're going to carry these yarns up as we're working with them, so leave your magenta yarn attached, and now we're going to start working in the crocus colourway. Row 7, we're working in our crocus and we're going to knit. Just knit all the stitches to the end. So now we've changed colour and we've knit a row in our crocus. Row 8, we're going to purl all the stitches. Before we start row 9, what we're going to do is we've got both our yarns here and we're going to twist them. So you're going to twist the magenta over the crocus, hold it in the back, and then start working with your crocus again. All this does is it carries the yarn you're not working up the side of the work, and you don't get long loops of your non-working yarn between the stripes. And you're going to twist the yarns together like that every right side row. So row 9, knit, so that is row 7 to 10, and it's just worked in stocking stitch. So we've just done 4 rows of stocking stitch. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to repeat what we did here for the first stripe in the magenta colour. So we're going to change colour again, and we're going to do this full stripe again. It starts off with a knit row and then we go back into our moss stitch pattern. And I'll show you why it starts off with a knit row. Can you see how lovely and clean that colour change is there? It's a nice straight line. If we went into doing the moss stitch now without doing a knit row in between, we would get some bleeding of colour between the stitches, because, if I show you on the back, this is what happens when you change colour in a purl stitch. You get both colours showing. So that's why we're going to do a knit row in the magenta first and then go back into our moss stitch pattern, just to give us nice clean stripes. We are going to twist our yarns because it's the start of a new row, and we're going to start in the magenta. And we're going to knit a row. Then row 12, we're going to go back into that moss stitch pattern. So knit a stitch, bring the yarn round, and purl a stitch. Knit a stitch, and purl a stitch. And just keep doing that till the end of the row. Knit one, purl one to the end of the row. We started on a knit stitch, so we're going to end on a purl stitch. Row 13, and we'll twist the yarns, and we're going to start on a purl stitch this time. And purl one, knit one to the end of the row. Ooh. Purl one and finish on a knit stitch. That was row 13, purl one, knit one. Rows 14 to 16, we're just going to carry on in the moss stitch pattern. So the next row you're going to knit one, purl one, and then you're going to do a row of purl one, knit one, and then a row of knit one, purl one. So I'll meet you back here when we've done that. And that is our second stripe in moss stitch finished there. And did you remember to twist your yarns at every right side row? Because I forgot. You can see where we were twisting them here, and now we have a bit of a gap. So all it means is that when we start our next stripe with this colour, we're just going to have a bit of a line of this. So it's really important that we keep that loose, because otherwise it could pull our stripes together at the side and we'll end up with our sides being shorter. We are going to start our third stripe now, and we're going to start it on a knit row, and we are going to twist our yarns here, but just remember to keep it very loose. Do a couple of stitches. And that's nice and loose there. So it's not going to pull it tight in any way. And that little yarn end won't be seen because it will hide it in the seam when we sew them up. So start of stripe 4, and we're going to knit all the stitches. So we changed colour again there, and we started our 4th stripe. And now we just need to work another 3 rows in stocking stitch. So the next row is purl, then knit a row and purl a row. And I'll see you back here when we've done that. And that is row 11 to 20 complete there. So we've worked another 2 complete stripes, one in the magenta, one in the crocus, one in the moss stitch pattern, and one in stocking stitch. And you can really see how that texture is showing up now. So we've got the lovely moss stitch, and then our stripes of stocking stitch, and the lovely clean changes of colour in between. If I show you again on the back, you can see how those colours sort of merge together, but on the front they're lovely and clean. So what we're going to do now, row 21 to 40, we're going to repeat what we've done another time. So we're going to do 2 more sets of stripes. And then row 41 to 46, we're going to do a final stripe of the moss stitch pattern. So you're going to end up with 4 stripes of the crocus colour and 5 stripes of the magenta colour. And it's all stuff we've done before. Just remember to keep twisting those yarns as we're going up the side, or if you forget, just remember to keep it loose every time you pick up to change colour. I'll leave you to get on with that. If there's anything you get stuck with, you can always rewind this video back a little bit and watch us do the first stripes again. But we're doing exactly the same thing, and we're just going to repeat it until we've got 5 stripes of moss stitch and 4 stripes of stocking stitch. I'll meet you when we've completed that, and I'll show you how we're going to cast off and weave in those ends. So here's what our background square is going to look like after we've finished row 46. So I've got 5 stripes of the moss stitch pattern in our lovely magenta colour, and 4 stripes of the crocus, the lighter pink, and the texture is just so lovely. I really enjoy this pattern. This would be absolutely brilliant if you wanted to make a scarf, because it would keep it nice and flat. So you could always cast on another one and start making yourself a scarf in stripes. That would be brilliant. And it's just time to cast off. So we're going to cast off on a knit row. We're not casting off in pattern because we started on a knit row. We're going to cast off on a knit row, and then the bottom and the top will match. So it's a very easy cast off. So we're just going to cast off all the stitches. So knit the first stitch, knit the second stitch, and pass the first stitch over the second. We're just going to keep doing that to the end of the row. So knit one and pass the previous stitch over. Just keep doing that to the end. Try and keep your stitches loose as always. To the last stitch. Then we're going to open up that last stitch, snip our yarn, thread it through the loop and pull tight. So that is our finished background square. We have a few ends to weave in. So we've just got our top and bottom, and then where we joined in our crocus yarn on the back. So I'll show you how to do one. I'm going to need our darning needle and just thread that. And you're going to just thread through the purl bumps on the back. So just go up and down. And you're going to do that for at least 6 stitches. You can do more if you want, if you've got more yarn, but no less, I would say. You want it to be quite secure in there. There we go. Give that a little tug, make sure it's secure, and trim the end. So just going to repeat that with the other ends so it's nice and tidy, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're finished. Here we have our finished Cheshire Cat striped square. So we've got those lovely stripes of moss stitch and stocking stitch, which give a lovely alternate texture. Nice clean stripes, nice clean changes of yarn. It's such a lovely square. So I really hope you've enjoyed making it with me today. And to finish off, you just want to bob a little label in the corner with a number 5 on and store it with your other squares. And I hope you'll join me when we make the next square in the next episode. Thank you very much for watching.